I'm Antonio Ramirez from the LUPC, and I'm here to unveil officially my new lab framework, which went live last month. So, as I mentioned in the intro, this framework is open to members of all UK UPC consortia and will be running for 3 years with an optional extension. So it's fresh, hot out of the oven. And without further ado, I will just continue with my presentation. So first of all, we're going to talk about the scope of the framework, what new elements have been added since the previous iteration, the benefits for our members of using the frameworks, the call off and further competition information that will help our users in accessing the goods, and some information on the suppliers, which I'm sure everybody's very keen on finding out. So moving on to the scope. This is the third iteration of, I guess, quite a successful framework that has been under the LUPC stewardship since its inception. So the scope keeps kind of growing as and when we get kind of new requirements that are actually, that belong within what one would expect is a fully functioning scientific laboratory, either for teaching or research or any other scientific purpose. So obviously our membership is mostly HEI, but particularly in the South and in London, we have a lot of research facilities, and they might require certain different types or different quality levels from the equipment that they need for different purposes. But as an overall broad category, we're looking at anything that you would expect when you go to work in a laboratory. So of the current 12 lots, 7 lots were carried on from the previous iteration. So you'll recognize centrifuges as lot 1, environmental control, safety, measurement, environmental, and miscellaneous. But for this section, I think what I'll do is I'll just concentrate on the newer lots. So previously, lot 5 covered both refrigerators and freezers and also other storage equipment. And the data suggests that there seems to be an appetite for having these as separate lots. So this time around, we split environmental storage into freezers and fridges and everything else. So by looking at everything else, we will be including items such as cryogenic conservation vessels, dry ice products, liquid nitrogen dewars, that sort of thing. And these have a different supply chain, and they often have specialist suppliers behind them. So I think separating them will help our members. In terms of another new lot was environmental monitoring systems. So these are the systems that actually go into a fleet of fridges or freezers to enable the lab managers to control and monitor the temperatures and other kind of technical elements that will come in really useful to not only preserve the integrity of what's inside the units, but to look at the maintenance overall of the equipment and making sure that they're not depreciating, etc. Gas detection and detection systems, gas monitoring, and detection systems. These were included in this framework this time around at the same time that they were taken out of the SUPC's laboratory gases framework, owing to the fact that this market is separate and distinct from gas supply. We incorporated them as they really do fit under the equipment of definition more than gas supply. And in a similar way, liquid handling robotics, which is lot 12, that used to be its own separate and discrete APUC framework. And this time around, due to the constant category management that we're always doing as collectively as consortia, we included it into this equipment framework for ease of our members, and also just to rationalize our categories, seeing to make sure that we practice what we preach. And also new for this iteration is the one-stop shop lot, which is really to the benefit of members who are either kitting out a brand new lab, or repurposing, or recondition, restocking on everything that is already established. And this will allow members to transact much more efficiently by running, for example, one RFQ exercise or a mini competition under one transaction, with suppliers that can actually deliver the whole range and the whole gamut of equipment. So that is the scope. But I think one of the questions that I keep getting from members is, some of them might be accustomed to really prescriptive frameworks where only certain products or certain brands or certain product families are included in, for example, other frameworks that they work with. And I think the advantage of the LUPC's solution or offer is that if there's a piece of equipment that can fit within each of these lot definitions, then it can be included. And it's our suppliers are aware, and they also kind of understand that there will be room for including new products if they do fall legitimately within the definitions, and obviously if they don't impinge on the scopes of any other frameworks. So those are the two key criteria that will allow users to use this framework for new stuff. So I've already mentioned what's new in terms of the new lots, but also this time around we've added the desktop exercise route to market or call off method for this. It wasn't available last time, so in addition to the Rank Direct Award, members can access a desktop calculator, which is available on HEC, and you can run your mini competitions, your desktop exercises by adjusting the criteria weightings. All this is explained much more clearly than I can do it verbally. All this is explained in the buyer's guide. Also, this particular, the previous framework had an element in it which allowed price increases. And this is a necessary evil because a lot of manufacturers simply increase their pricing around or maybe just above the consumer price index or whatnot, and there's just no way of avoiding this really in some cases. Not all framework suppliers on the previous framework would do this every year, but some of them would have to. And so this time around, we've put in an annual lot ranking refresh mechanism to try and control and add an element of jeopardy in the increases, just to make sure that suppliers are aware that we're monitoring these increases, and if these increases change the lot rankings on a yearly basis, well, that could affect how many inquiries for direct award they get. So we hope that this will achieve increased control on pricing. Also, the sustainability element and the responsible procurement element of the tender process is being delivered through a new system called Sustain, an LUPC system that monitors and assesses risk and is based on specialist surveys that the suppliers will respond to give us a really good idea of where they are in terms of responsible procurement. And so those would be the key new elements that we've incorporated this time around. In terms of benefits of using the frameworks, well, it's a compliant route to market. Often, depending on individual projects, particularly in the response to COVID, we know that members simply do not have time to run their own ODU tenders or to run their own compliant processes. And by using the flexibility in the call-off methods and our frameworks, and also by accessing a really wide pool of suppliers, they can meet their objectives, and we can facilitate that. So you might, in the coming slides, you'll see the number of suppliers we have per lot. That's something between 5 and 8 suppliers per lot, which is quite a lot of suppliers to manage, and that's quite a bit of resource from the framework managers. But I think what we want to do is really offer members choice, and particularly when supply chains are very stressed and there's a lot of competition between distributors, all the invisible elements of the supply chains that we don't see, there could be increased competition for certain products. So we wanted to broaden the supply base as much as possible, because we do know that certain commodities or certain goods are really under increased demand. As always, we have maximum pricing for rank direct awards, and suppliers can also request bespoke requirements, as I'd mentioned before. General contract management is provided by myself, so I will be running biannual meetings with each of the 17 suppliers on the framework. We'll be going through their KPIs, but most importantly, we'll be looking at feedback from our members. So it's really important that if something comes up, members continue to let me know if they're having an issue with a supplier, if they're having some sort of any kind of problem where I could be an escalation point. More than happy to get involved. But at the same time, it's also important for me to understand what the suppliers are doing well, and how to motivate them to continue providing good service. So this is really where I need a hand from yourselves as members and as customers. And by all means, I'm always around for a call if you need to share on a particular supplier. And just looking at this list, I think that's pretty much, for anyone here who's unfamiliar with this particular framework, or anyone here who's new to consortia, by all means, do give me a call and we can discuss these in more detail. So this will bring me to the call off and further competition. So most people here, I hope, would be aware that absolutely everything you need to run your call off is available on HE contracts or HEC. So this will contain a document library with the key downloadable attachments that you can use. So obviously we've got the user guide, also known as the buyer's guide. We always recommend that you download a fresh copy whenever you need it. And this is because with so many suppliers on so many different lots, there may be contact details that might change. There might be some announcements I might need to make, and by having a fresh downloadable copy every time you're working to the with the latest information, quite often a person would download a buyer's guide and keep it in their Outlook and then share it around, and then if you're under pressure, you might not find the right contact because it would have belonged to it would have been updated. So that's just a little bit of advice. We've got the supplier contact details in this document as well, and also on the framework page, and the terms and conditions. You can download this. These come with the call-off terms and conditions come with a form that actually creates a bona fide call-off contract. So you really have the entire toolkit here at your disposal. If you'll be running a mini competition, or looking at, or wanted to look at the weightings in more detail, or look at the supplier questionnaire, the supplier Q&A, I have all the tender documents that were used for the framework tender on HEC in its own separate section. So you can always feel free to look at those to learn more about this particular framework, or as inspiration for any of your own individual procurements that you might have to run for your institutions. And so these are the call-off documents that are on HEC. And next, we'll just talk about, oops, went a bit haywire there, sorry. Next, we'll just talk about the routes to the framework call-off options. So we've got the Rank Direct Award, which is ideal for scenarios where time is of essence and you have all the requirements firmly laid out in the framework, and you can direct award to the #1 ranked supplier. If that supplier by any for any reason cannot meet your requirement, either technically or because of time constraints, you can then go to the second ranked supplier, and so on until you can source what you need. You will need to issue the call-off terms and conditions as part of this exercise, and always reference the framework in the agreement, which is Lab 5061 LU. Okay, and next will be, oops. Then we've got the desktop exercise, which I mentioned earlier. The instructions on how to use this are on the buyer's guide, and you can always give me a call if you have if you want to discuss how to use this. If you just bear with me, I'll figure this out. And finally, we have running a further competition, which is ideally the best route to market when time permits. We're very keen in kind of communicating to our members that they need to remain connected to their stakeholders and hopefully use their leverage to get that early engagement from their stakeholders to allow a further competition. Often value and other opportunities are waived by going to the same prescriptive specifications. Sometimes the specifications are quite closed, and that means that not all the suppliers can participate or benefit. It's important for end users to think about output specifications. It could be that there might be new products at the market in the market for a better price, and they would have the same outcome and they would be compatible with other kit. We do know that there are obviously limitations. Certain research projects have research protocols that prescribe very specifically the models and the types of products that need to be used, but that probably isn't the case in every single procurement. So the more time and effort you can put at the front of the process through a mini competition, you'll not just enjoy better pricing, but also you can tweak your own institution's individual quirks into the specification so that the supplier understands and can give you a good price where they can recoup their cost to serve. Because we've seen with some direct awards that the university is so complex to work with that the supplier will probably be missing out on whatever margins they could have made through the cost to serve, i.e. through increased billing issues or paperwork and things like that. You can always access this presentation afterwards to look at this in more detail, but the key do's and don'ts are: please do always reference the framework. Make sure that you keep the documents, the documentations that you've used in case they're needed for your institution's audit processes. Always provide sufficient time and make sure that the principle of proportionality is applied in your call-offs as well. No point in asking for a mini competition for next day delivery for something really complex, and then as a way to go to direct award. I think you need to be quite just be aware of the challenges that the suppliers are having as well. The classic another issue that or question that we get is, can I cherry pick suppliers? Can I combine suppliers from different lots? And the answer is no. When you're running a mini competition, every single supplier within that lot needs to be invited, and you can't pick and choose suppliers from other lots for a particular mini competition. And once you're ready to go, and upon putting in place your call off, again, the reference numbers are really important, and securely file all your information and ensure that all purchase orders and supplier invoices quote the terms and quote the agreement. In some cases, you can upload your terms and conditions to your purchase orders, and that just gives you the protection you need, because you are actually purchasing within a framework. Apart from that, I'll just go to who's on the framework, which is, I'm sure, what many of you are waiting for, have been waiting for. So you'll recognize some key names. I won't read them all, but I will just point out that the new additions on this lot this time around are Hawksley and Lab Mode. I think both are SMEs. Hawksley is a really interesting specialist family-owned business based in the south of England, but obviously, you know, you can, with suppliers like this on the framework, you can access a huge range of centrifuges. I won't read these all, so I'll just go and spend a couple of seconds on each circle, and then I'll continue. Right, so lots of old faces and some new faces on the framework this time around. So again, if you would like to discuss the framework in more detail, or just have a chin wag about the suppliers or anything that you might think of, by all means, do give me a call. Would anybody have any questions?
Yes, Antonio. We've got a question from Helen Warren of the University of Bristol. She's just asked, would you consider adding engineering equipment in future iterations?
That's a really, really good question. In my introduction to the day, I mentioned that I'm on the lookout for any gaps in our framework offerings. And one thing I've never really understood is at what point does engineering stop becoming mechanical and become kind of laboratory focused. I know that obviously Sarah manages the electronic components, and my understanding was that requirement was satisfied in some way, shape or form by the lots on that framework. But I'm really interested in having an offline conversation and really getting under the skin of this and seeing what else we could offer, because obviously we cannot insert any new suppliers or any lots in this particular framework. But that's not to say that we could append such a requirement into an upcoming framework, or at least put it in the pipeline to try to deliver it as soon as possible. So by all means, my contact details are here, so please do reach out for me. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? You can leave them in the chat function. And I'll just give it 30 seconds just to see if anybody wants to leave a question. No, I think that's it. Antonio, have you got anything else you wish to add?
Yeah, I have a question myself, actually, to anyone really who's who's on the institution side. So one thing that I'm looking forward to is actually to going into the office and meeting some of you face to face and just seeing what it's like on the other side of the fence. I joined the LUPC, as you can probably see from my from the picture on my Prezi, just before lockdown. So my first day was a week before lockdown, and I've been working from my garage ever since. So what I'd like to know is the process of loading framework products into the e catalogs. This is something that I've never really understood, if there's any consistency across the institutions to make sure that the products are actually referenced as framework products, and mechanically how the benefits of the frameworks are actually plumbed into each purchase. I also want to understand if it's possible to run mini competitions through any catalog. And I guess another thing I'd like to know is, at what point does a purchase become less efficient through the catalog and more efficient through an RFQ on an e-procurement system, or even an email kind of RFQ or mini competition based on Outlook? So I don't know if that makes sense, but if anybody here kind of has any insight, it could be subject for another conversation, really, seeing as we're almost out of time. But yeah, I look forward at some
sorry,
point.
Antonio, we've just had a quick question from Paul Carter, just asking he'd be interested in talking further about non-wet labs.
Okay. Yes, definitely, Paul. I'll be up for that. I'll reach out to you separately.
Wonderful. Thank you, Antonio. I'm going to jump in now and just say that that's the end of the session, and it's break time now, and I know it's the first break we've had since the opening at 9:30, so I'm sure everybody will be grateful for an opportunity to step away from their computers for 5 minutes. But then just to say that it's a 15-minute break until 11:25, and then the session after that will be led by Danny Sweeney at SUPC, and it will focus on the ERLA consumables agreement, and it's just looking at the current picture of supply under that particular agreement. So thank you, Antonio, and as Antonio said, his contact details are available, so if anybody does have any questions to follow up or wants to take Antonio up on the offer of a wider discussion. And again, we've got the kind of Q&A session at 1:35 again, which would be the perfect opportunity for some of those kind of like broader conversations.
Thank you.
So wonderful. Thank you, Antonio, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. See you later.